Hi, this is Lisa with Coping with Yarn, and today I will be reading Chapter 7 of E.T. the Extra-Terrestrial in his adventure on Earth. Okay. In the night, the extraterrestrial looked up from his pillow to see Elliot climbing out the bedroom window onto the tiled roof. Where was the boy going? The space traveler gazed into his own little window as Elliot crossed the slanted roof and then scampered down the stairs leading from it to the garden. In another moment, he was out of sight. The old star rover monitored the boy's path telepathically. Elliot was climbing into the hills beyond the house. Did he go to get his food for his friend in the closet? No, the boy was creeping onto the dread fire road where all troubles begin. The extraterrestrial's delicate mind antenna twitched spasmodically, for across the night he could feel the clicking of teeth on the ring of terrible trophy. Elliot was not alone on the fire road. Another was there, searching in the shadows. Searching for whom? Could there be any doubt? He felt the heavy footsteps, felt the cold, staring eyes of the Earthman, a gaze that pierced the night with its own telepathy. The aged space traveler switched off the mind radar and huddled in the closet. They were after him with their blinding lights. They were up there in the hills, covering every inch of it. Their own mental radar telling them the extraterrestrial is hereabouts, and we shall find him and stuff him under glass. He reached for an Oreo cookie and chewed it nervously. They must never find him. But they were so near, and Elliot was up there spying on them. What if he was caught? Could he be made to reveal what he knew about a certain oddly shaped guest in his closet? He turned toward his geranium and gave it a pleading glance. The plant turned on its stem and faced him. Its tight buds unfolded, and it bloomed all at once in a burst of brilliant red flowers. Then it sighed, nearly expiring from the tremendous effort, but the space botanist stroked it with his long fingertip and murmured softly, "Ugh." He whispered sweet nothings. Just kidding, that was me being silly, sorry. His cosmic speech, the quintessence of experience on innumerable worlds, renewed the plant and stabilized it in its glorious blossoming. Your voice is purest grow formula, ancient master, said the geranium. Yes, but it isn't English. The aged voyager scratched his head. English is what he needed in order to get about better and make his wishes known. Gertie had brought him her ABC book. He took it in his lap and slowly traced the letters. M and M. I think E.T.'s a chocoholic. Elliot lay in the brush by the side of the fire road and watched the government agents pass, their lights sweeping in all directions. If they spotted him, he'd just say he was out walking his dog. Harvey crouched beside him, shivering nervously. The animal had an uncontrollable urge to rush out and bite the man with the keys. Anyone with that many keys, Harvey felt, should be bitten. There's nothing here tonight, said one of the agents. I know, but I still have the feeling we're being watched. The man with the keys swept his light along the edge of the road. But by whom? By a half-starved dog, said Harvey to himself, and he wondered if emergency milk-bone rations might be present, as one of the vehicles parked on the fire road. He tried to edge forward, but Elliot held him down. Cool it, Harvey, whispered Elliot, and backed off into the deepest shadows. In another minute, he was sliding silently down the sandy hillside, Harvey rolling along beside him. The night was lit with a billion stars, and Elliot knew he had one of the great secrets of the night, hidden in his room. He would never sell that secret, never surrendered it, not even if they caught him and tortured him. Harvey, for his part, would sell out for a single milk bone, but nobody was asking him. He pawed along, trying to formulate a plan. "Harvey," said Elliot quietly, "we have a great treasure with us. Do you know that?" Harvey stared down at the passing sidewalk. All he knew was that there wasn't enough dog food in the world. "I love him, Harvey. He's the best little guy I ever met." Elliot looked up at the stars and tried to imagine which one belonged to his new friend. "They all belong to him," said a whisper from the moonlight. Harvey's ears perked up. Did I hear someone? Rustling a bag of kibble? He looked around, but the street was empty. Mary woke to a noise on the roof. She removed her herbal eye pads and sat up. But the sound had already ceased, and the house was still again. She went to the window and looked out, and the garden was empty except for Harvey, who was furiously digging a hole. She drew the shade on the demented dog and returned to her bed. Something strange was going on. She knew it. But what? What were her children up to? She smoothed out her pillow and embraced it sleepily. The dream she'd been having returned to her, and she'd been dancing now. How nice. With someone who only came up to her navel. Her eyelids fell. The strange music began again, an odd alien sound with squiggles and bleeps, and she felt herself going around once more, her partner out of sight below, nose pressed to her stomach. We've got to tell Elliot. It's too serious. No, he wants to stay with us. The two brothers were walking toward the school bus stop. Michael was upset. His world had been turned upside down. Weird ideas kept moving through his head about satellite paths and the surface of Mercury, instead of end runs and quarterback sneaks, the important things in life. He's a man from outer space, Elliot. We don't know what he's going to do or why he's here. We could wake up and all be on Mars or something, surrounded by millions of those squishy guys. Squashy guys. Elliot wasn't listening. A new figure on the morning street had caught his eye. That's not a regular milkman, is it? He must be on vacation. That's some other guy. Michael, listen. There are people in the neighborhood, people who've never been here before. Look at that car up there, with a man sitting in it, reading a newspaper. They're looking for him. They? Who are they? They're all around. They're up in the hills. You better figure something out pretty soon, Elliot, before they close in on us. He needs time to plan his strategy. Maybe he's not that smart. Maybe he's like a worker bee who only knows how to push buttons or something. Michael, he's so far ahead of us. You can't imagine. Yeah, then why is he living in our closet? He had bad luck, but we're going to change it. Elliot, you and I are just a pair of dumb kids. Can't you understand that? If anybody helps him, it should be trained scientists or something. Guys with smarts. They could test him, feed him better. We're feeding him okay. Oreo cookies, Elliot? What kind of diet is that? Maybe you're killing him and don't know it. Elliot's face grew tense. His voice strained. Michael, if we turn him in over to anybody else, he'll never get back to his home. I know that for sure. How, Elliot? How do you know? I feel it, like it was burned into me. It comes to me over and over that he chose us because we're the ones who could help him. But why us? We're nobody. We don't have any money. We don't have any ideas. We don't even have a father. None of that matters. He knows. We're the ones, too, to put it together for him. Put what together? Something. Elliot fumbled as if he were just waking up from a dream he should remember but couldn't. A dream the space creature had sent him. A picture of what he needed, but the picture had already faded, and the bus stop was just ahead. Tyler, Steve, and Greg were there, needing each other as they waited, and needing Elliot as he approached. Hey, Elliot, how's the bake shop today? Make any fruit pies? Kiss off, Tyler. Greg sprayed Elliot with some advice about Gertie, spittle shining on his habitually twisted lip. It was thoughtful, sound advice. Stuff her in the clothes hamper. Steve wiggled his wings. Say, Elliot, I forgot to ask. What happened to your goblin? Did he come back? The strain of Gertie's dolly games, of playing jacks and potsy, of baking an endless variety of topsoil tarts, had taken its toll on Elliot's spirit. He blurted out, Yeah, he came back, and he wasn't a goblin, he was a spaceman. What? Who's a spaceman? A small red-haired boy pushed forward, speaking in a loud nasal voice. You know how long it takes to get from Earth to Uranus? Up Uranus, Lance, said Elliot, already regretting his slip. Lance's rat-like gaze was bright, and he seemed to sense that something important was up. The school bus pulled onto the curb, and the boys climbed in, past a new driver. Hey, what happened to George? He's sick, said the new driver, whom none of the children had seen before. Gertie had no nursery school today. She was supposed to, but she pretended to be sick and got in the janitor to drive her home, where she could play in peace with the monster. Because Elliot was keeping the monster all to himself, she got out her wagon and started putting toys in it, which she knew the monster would like. She hoped he would stay with them forever and marry Mommy. She pulled the wagon down the hall into Elliot's room, opened the closet door, and went in. The monster looked up and rolled his eyes. Gertie rolled her eyes, giggling, and sat down beside him with her wagon. Are you a big toy? She looked him up and down. Well, if you're not a big toy, what are you? He backed into the corner of the closet and seemed kind of scared. She wasn't scared at all, not anymore, because last night she dreamt the monster had taken her to a beautiful place far away in the stars. He'd taken her hand and shown her wonderful flowers, and strange little birds had landed on his head, singing to him, and there'd been lovely light all around. Now she took his hand. Don't be scared, she said. It's just like in the dream. She stroked his hand, petting it the way she petted Harvey. Elliot and I are taking care of you, so you don't have anything to worry about, even if you are a great big toy. Here, all my dolls in the wagon, see? Don't they have nice hair? You don't have any hair, do you know that? The extra-terrestrial gazed at the chattering child, and though she was better company than Harvey, how could such children really ever help him to reach his people? They could hide him, yes, for a while, but he needed high technology, not a wagon full of dolls. And here's my rolling pin, and this is my cowgirl vest. Isn't it pretty? And this is my speak and spell. Did you ever play with one of these? The elderly alien took the bright rectangular box into his long fingers. His mind leapt suddenly into higher focus, and his heart light fluttered. It teaches you to spell, said Gertie. See? She pressed a button on the box, and a button marked A. The speak and spell spoke to Gertie. It said quite clearly in a man's voice, A. She pressed the B button, and it said B. The old Voyager pressed the M button and heard M. Now you watch this, said Gertie, and pressed a button marked Go. The box spoke. Spell mechanic. Gertie pressed buttons, but her spelling wasn't all that good yet, and the box said, No, wrong, try again. She tried again, and the box said, That is incorrect. The correct spelling is MECHANIC. The space being stared at the instrument, eyes flashing. Yes, it would teach him to speak on Earth language. But more important, far more important, in fact, the most important thing of all things in the universe at that moment, it was a computer. His mind scan was already inside it, racing over the microprocessor, the speech synthesizer, the memory chips. Hey, you okay? Gertie touched the ancient creature whose hands were trembling. He nodded at the child, but his gaze remained fixed on the precious instrument, while his brain raced, sending alternate solutions, past and bypass to freedom, all of them born from this little box. Gertie pressed buttons again. Spell nuisance, said the box. She engaged in some incorrect spelling, and the senior scientist watched her play and waited until she grew tired. Well, Mr. Monster, what's your spelling lesson? That's your spelling lesson for today. I'll be back. The child skipped out, and the monster flipped the box over in his lap and removed its back. Wonder of wonders, he caressed the circuits. Here is the heart of his transmitter. He munched an Oreo and began. A radiant schematic of the speak and spell appeared in his mind as he gazed, its secrets becoming his own. Stored information and the methods of storage were child's play to an old spacebound like himself. Computers were familiar friends, fancy finding one that spoke. Spell, mechanic. His ears flap open, and he listened intently to the machine, his mind quickly grasping the phonemes in which the language was built. Spell, nuisance. His own circuits buzzed, assimilating, synthesizing. A glaze came over his eyes as his mind shifted into higher learning hands on other planets, dead planets, lost planets. He had studied the excuse me. He had studied the tablets of ancient tongues, eventually mastering them. Here in his lap now was such a tablet, the speak and spell of Earth, the electronic stone by which he could master the signs and sounds of this planet. Spell, refrigerator. The subtle radiance of the word appeared on his inner scan, and he saw the object mentioned. Saw a refrigerator, the place where milk and cookies were kept. Refrigerator. His mouth wrapped itself around the word and the concept simultaneously. His stomach seemed to speak and understood too, all his inner coordinates firing around his precious sound. This inspired the language center of his marvelous brain came fully on. 1,000 stored tongues reappearing as reference and cross-reference took place, so that Earth's language could be viewed in the round. He grasped its fundamentals and then its delicate edges. Candy. Cake. Soon he would have a complete working vocabulary, one that would allow him to function anywhere in society and say the important things. Ice cream. He pressed the machine's button again and again. Truly, it was a friendly device, both teacher and companion. But it was more than that. For, speaking Earth language already, this machine with a computer inside it would be made to speak yet another language. It would be his own language, and he would broadcast it to the stars. His only error of the day was remaining in standby telepathy with Elliot. His full attention being on the speak and spell, he forgot about Elliot, but fine telepathic connections remained, and they gave Elliot a very difficult time, for Elliot was supposed to be cutting up a frog in biology class. The teacher was about to begin, but one of his students was receiving an incandescent message concerning the schematic of a speak and spell. We're going to peel back the skin. The teacher pointed to the tub of live frogs, and take a look inside. He picked up one of the frogs and made a red line down its belly. We'll make our incision line. Elliot, just what do you think you're doing? The teacher stared down at Elliot's lab report, which Elliot was furiously covering with diagrams and highly sophisticated electronic circuitry, his hand moving as if he were writing automatically, as if controlled by a ghost. The ghost, of course, was the extra-terrestrial in Elliot's closet, his mind overriding Elliot's with the mysteries of digitized speech and programmable memory. But the teacher didn't know this. His student, always something of a problem, was ignoring the lesson completely, was writing so furiously that his brow was covered with sweat, and everyone in the room was suddenly watching him. Elliot! The boy wrote right off the edge of the paper onto the desk. His arm wrote in the air. He walked to the front of the room and snapped up the frog anatomy chart and began writing in chalk on a blackboard. Tyler, Greg, and Steve stared in amazement. Tyler stretched his long legs out under the biology bench and tapped Greg on the ankle. Then he pointed at Elliot and made a whirling screw-loose sign with his finger near his head. Greg nodded, copious amounts of excited saliva collecting at the corner of his mouth. as he watched Elliot scribbling like a maniac on the board, weird diagrams flowing from his chalk like the insides of a radio or something. A nervous bubble formed on Greg's lip. It was to blow such bubbles that he saved saliva. He had never succeeded in actually getting a bubble to float off his lip into the air. They always broke when he tried to blow them away, but a perfect specimen suddenly launched itself and sailed off toward the teacher, breaking on the back of his head. The teacher didn't notice. He was screaming at Elliot. "Young man, sit down at once!" He grabbed Elliot's arm, but it was infused with a power far beyond that of a boy. It felt like a pulsating rod of iron, and its cryptic creation was quickly covering the board and creating pandemonium in the classroom. "Class dismissed! We'll continue this next week, Elliot." The chalk snapped in Elliot's finger and fell to the floor. He turned toward the teacher, his eyes fogged, mind carrying the combined expertise of corporations' full computer staff, all of it having descended on him at once, out of nowhere. "Analog to digital," he muttered, and the teacher yanked him into the hall, a tiny drop of blood at the end of Elliot's nose. Steve took his winged hat out of his pocket and put it on. He fluffed out the wings and shook his head as he watched Elliot being dragged toward the principal's office. "He'll be cleaning erasers for a month." "He's cracking up," said Tyler. "Maybe he found Mary's diet pills," said Greg. "Didn't she used to have some pretty good uppers?" "Listen," said Steve, "this is because of all those mud pies he's been making. I know what a little sister can do to you." He smoothed back his wings. "She can wreck your life." Gertie sat up from her coloring book and wondered why she was coloring at all, when she had the monster to play with. But something had moved her out of the closet and sent her down the hall into her own room. Now she had popped awake and wanted to play with the monster some more. She walked back down the hall to Elliot's room and went in, and as soon as she entered, she remembered more about the dream as she had the night before. She and the monster had been off at the faraway place, sliding down a waterfall, hand in hand. She opened the closet door, and the monster was playing with her speak and spell. She looked into his big, funny eyes, and she saw the dream waterfall there, every color in the rainbow shining as the water danced. The old traveler set the speak and spell aside. His mind was satisfied now, having swallowed whole the complicated circuitry, the best mental meal he'd eaten since he had come to the planet. But he'd completely forgotten the children, and he wasn't to do that, for they were absolutely necessary. Without them, his work could not succeed. From the tiny hands of this child, he received the all-powerful speak and spell. What other gifts had she in store for him? "Come on, monster. The coast is clear." Gertie led him by the hand, her fingers dwarfed in his immense palm, upon which was written the fate of Starman, that 3 children of Earth would help him back to the stars. But the line of fate is the hardest of all to interpret, as he knew, and the creases crossing his were many, leading up or down. Gertie toddled along in front of him, across the room and into the hall. "Come on, you'll like this." He could nearly understand the child now, having spent his afternoon inside the reproduced waveform of speech in the speak and spell. Yes, it was time to try a little of this new language. "Spell mechanic." Gertie looked at him. MECHANEX. That is incorrect. "You know how to oh, wait. That is incorrect. You know how to talk?" She grabbed him along after her into her mother's bedroom, where the extra-terrestrial picked up the full wave of the willow creature. It was lovely at the center, but edged with loneliness. "Young willow creature, Mexico is just a blimp in the much greater screen, and there is a handsome admirer nearby. Blip, blip." He looked out the window and saw her just pulling into the driveway and parking near her vegetable garden. A kindred soul, after all, was she not? Loving vegetables as he himself did? Was this not the basis for a more extended, more intimate relationship? Dare he show his eggplantish profile to her? No, it seemed insane. She could not understand his presence in her son's closet. It would be too difficult to explain, even in his new-found mastery of her language. That is correct. Now spell nuisance. Mommy's in the garden, said Gertie. She can't hear us here. Gertie tiptoed over to the TV and turned it on. A prancing Muppet appeared, eyes boggling much in the fashion of the extra-terrestrial. He moved closer to the screen. Can you count to 10? Asked the bug-eyed Muppet. Yes, said Gertie. 1, said the Muppet. 1, answered the monster. 2, sang out Gertie, rushing ahead. 20, 30, 40, 50. 50, repeated the monster. The Muppet danced upon his big feet. Gertie looked down at the intergalactical paddles on the space beam. Are you a Muppet? She asked. No. Apple, said the Muppet. Apple, said Gertie. The monster was edging toward the back of the TV, wishing to see its components more closely. His scanner was probing the UHF tuner was that he needed to multiply his speak and spell signal to the microwave frequency. That is correct. Now spell beacon transmitter. Here it was. He had only to remove it. However, it belonged to the willow creature. He felt her attachment to it, to a certain program involving a man who flexed muscles and bounced around madly, an idiotic grin on his face. Nonetheless, I must borrow it, temporarily. Gertie, however, was playfully shrieking, and before the genial old scientist could remove the UHF tuner, she slapped a cowboy hat on his head to match her own cowgirl's sombrero. Now we're both cowboys. B, said the Muppet. B, said the monster. I see by your outfit, sang Gertie, off-key, that you are a cowboy. Be good, said the monster. The high spirits of the shrieking child were sure to attract the mother. The old monster shuffled to the window and looked out. The garden was empty. He pushed the cowboy hat out of his eyes and pointed to the hallway toward his room. Home. Say it again, said Gertie. Home. Oh, home. Gertie shrieked with laughter. The willow creature's voice echoed from below. Gertie, do you want to see the biggest pumpkin of your life? I'm playing, Mommy, with the... Be good. Be good, said the monster. He took her doll and twisted its arm. It acted like some sort of switch. He knew to turn her off. And at once, she was quiet. E.T., you naughty boy. He led her quietly down the hallway, but then stopped to peek over the railing at the mother below, who was at the hall table looking through mail. Her gentle aura of rainbow light flowed out in every direction, and he lingered in the fringes of it, momentarily. Come on, monster, whispered Gertie. She dragged him the rest of the way down the hall, into Elliot's trash-littered room. The closet door was open, and Gertie pushed him inside, just as Elliot's voice came from downstairs. Hi, I'm home! Gertie entered the closet with the monster, and she picked up her speak and spell and pressed the letter B. What appeared on the display was a letter like none seen on Earth before, and the voice that spoke from within the box no longer said the good old letter B. It said blip, or something like that, something very strange in any case, and the old computer wizard smiled his great turtleish smile. I wonder what's wrong with my speak and spell, said Gertie. Nothing, said the old being. His rearrangement of the signal was satisfactory. He had broken the links in the chips and reprogrammed them with new vocabulary. The closet door opened, and Elliot entered. Elliot, said the monster from his pillows. Elliot's mouth fell open. I taught him how to talk, said Gertie. You talk to me? Exclaimed Elliot. Say it again. Elliot. E.T., can you say that? You're E.T. E.T., said the extraterrestrial. A knock came 3 times on the door of the room. That's Michael, said Elliot, and opened the closet. They stepped out into the room as Michael entered. The monitor looked at him. Spell mechanic. M-E-C-H. What? Elliot smiled. We taught him how to talk. I taught him, said Gertie. Michael took 1 step closer. What else can you say? Spell nuisance. Is that all he can do, tell you to spell things? The old wanderer shrugged modestly. He still couldn't understand the children very well, but he knew he could communicate the essentials. They would have to steal their mother's UHF tuner while keeping him supplied with cookies. The ringing telephone interrupted their talk, and Mary's voice floated up the steps. Elliot, it's for you! Elliot stepped into the hall, picked up the extension phone, and trailed it back into his room by its long cord. Hello, Elliot? Shrill, nasal tones filled the earpiece. This is Lance. Elliot felt the dangerously inquisitive probe behind Lance's voice. Lance, who never called him except to lie about how high his score had been in asteroids. Lance, now suddenly talking about Saturn and Mount Olympus on Mars and other strange space things. Yes, Elliot, space. I seem to have it on the brain. Isn't that strange? Don't you feel something strange is going on? I do. Hey, I gotta go. Elliot hung up the phone and wiped his forehead. Lance was closing in. He could feel it. So, too, could the telepathic old Voyager who had monitored the call. The vibration was still inside him. Of a too curious child. Of the kind that might spell trouble. And so, there was no time to lose. He pointed to the phone and then to the window. Huh? What do you mean, E.T.? Again, he pointed to the phone and the window and the immensity of the sky. Phone. Home. You want to phone home? He nodded. E.T. phone home. And that is end of chapter 7. Bye!